Heavenly Stories.
What would you do if an angel appeared to you and said your life would never be the same? That's the question that hung in the air the moment Mary, a young woman from Nazareth, went about her day. Her hands were busy weaving threads, her thoughts humble and unassuming. Life had always been simple, quiet, steady, the kind of life that seemed ordinary. But on that ordinary day, the extraordinary found her. The angel Gabriel appeared suddenly, shimmering with a light that made the small room glow as if the sun itself had been captured in a single moment. Mary's heart raced, her breath caught. Fear and awe collided in her chest. "Do not be afraid, Mary," the angel said, voice like a melody that both soothed and stirred her spirit. "You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you shall call him Jesus. He will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Most High." Mary felt the weight of the words. Her mind, trained in humility and obedience, raced. How could this be? She had no husband, she was young, unassuming, and the world's eyes would surely judge. Yet beneath the fear, a spark of something deeper, something divine, stirred. The angel's eyes held an infinite patience, as though every doubt Mary could muster had been anticipated, understood, and lovingly met. "Mary," Gabriel said again, gently, "for nothing is impossible with God." She bowed her head, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. This was no ordinary task, this was a calling that would change history, a path marked with both unimaginable blessing and unthinkable trials. But in her heart, a seed of courage rooted itself, ready to grow. "Could I really be part of God's plan?" she whispered. The angel, seeing her internal struggle, offered a sign of reassurance. "Elizabeth, your relative, has also conceived a son in her old age. Nothing is impossible for God." Mary's heart swelled with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. She thought of her simple life, the quiet prayers whispered each night, the gentle rhythm of days filled with work and devotion. And now, the impossible was being asked of her, to become the mother of the Messiah. As the angel departed, the room seemed to hold its breath. Mary sat in silence, her mind a whirlwind of fear, faith, and a trembling hope. Finally, she spoke, not to the world, not even to God, but to herself. "I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me according to your word." And with that, a quiet courage settled over her, a resolve born from faith and humility. Her life would never be the same again, and yet, in that moment, she embraced the extraordinary path set before her. Have you ever felt called to do something so impossible, so terrifying, that every step forward felt like walking on air? For Mary, that impossible path began the moment she accepted Gabriel's message. Days passed, yet the wonder and awe did not fade. Instead, they grew heavier, pressing on her heart with the weight of destiny. Each morning, she prayed, seeking understanding, seeking courage. How could a young woman from Nazareth, humble and ordinary, carry the Son of God? How could she face the whispers, the judgment, the disbelief of the world? But Mary's faith was like a quiet flame, flickering yet persistent. She remembered the angel's words, "For nothing is impossible with God." That simple truth became her anchor in a storm of uncertainty. Then came the journey, one she had not yet imagined. Soon, news arrived that Joseph, her betrothed, would need to travel to Bethlehem for a census. Mary, though heavily pregnant, prepared herself to leave the comfort of home, the safety of familiar streets, for a long and uncertain road. Each step was painful, each mile a test of endurance. The roads were rough, the nights cold, and the fear of being ridiculed or even threatened loomed large. Yet through every hardship, Mary's spirit did not waver. She held on to humility, the quality that had defined her life. She carried more than her own hopes, she carried the hope of a world yet to be born into salvation. Every step on the dusty road was an act of faith, a declaration of trust in the plan she could not fully understand. And then came the inn. The city was crowded with travelers, and every door seemed to be closed. Exhaustion threatened to consume her. Doubt crept into her mind, is this truly the place for him? Am I strong enough to bear this? But even in the darkness of uncertainty, Mary's heart remained open. She remembered the angel's gentle reassurance, the quiet strength of her own resolve, and finally, a humble stable offered its shelter. It was not grand, not even safe, but it was enough. And there, in the simplicity of straw and the warmth of an animal's breath, Mary's humility met divine purpose. She realized that greatness does not always come with comfort, that the extraordinary often begins in the ordinary. She was ready. As night fell, and the stars watched silently from above, Mary whispered a prayer of surrender and hope. Her heart, though nervous, was filled with an unwavering determination, let your will be done. Little did she know that this night, humble and quiet, would mark the moment the world began to change forever. And for Mary, the journey of faith was only beginning. Imagine holding the weight of the world's hope in your arms, in the quiet of the night, with only faith as your guide. For Mary, that night had finally arrived. The stable was humble, the air heavy with the scent of hay and the quiet murmurs of animals. Joseph stood nearby, his hand steadying Mary's trembling one. The reality of what was happening pressed on her chest. Soon, she would bring into the world a child unlike any other. Fear, wonder, and awe collided inside her, each heartbeat a drumbeat of destiny. The labor was long, the night cold, but Mary's spirit remained steadfast. She thought of Gabriel's words, of the promises whispered in the stillness of Nazareth, and she drew strength from the unseen. Every pang, every ache, every tear of pain was mingled with a profound sense of purpose. She was not merely giving birth, she was giving hope to humanity. And then it happened. The cries of a newborn pierced the night, clear and strong, breaking through the silence like a trumpet heralding a new dawn. Mary held him in her arms, the Son of God, the Savior, the embodiment of divine promise. Time seemed to pause, even the animals watched with quiet reverence. The world outside the stable was still, yet inside, history had shifted. Mary looked into his tiny eyes and felt a love so immense it defied words. Humility and awe intertwined within her heart. She knew that this child, fragile yet powerful, would change lives, hearts, and the course of history. Yet in this quiet moment, all that mattered was love, the pure, unwavering love that only a mother could feel. Joseph stood beside her, silent but supportive, awestruck by the miracle unfolding before him. He understood, in ways words could not capture, the sacred role they both now played. Together, they marveled at the small, perfect life in Mary's arms. And then, as if drawn by the miracle, visitors arrived, shepherds, simple folk guided by angelic messengers. Their eyes widened, their hearts lifted, and they knelt in humble adoration. Mary watched quietly, her heart swelling not with pride, but with the serene understanding that God's work often begins in the unlikeliest places. That night, the stars above seemed to shine brighter, and the world, though unaware, began to feel the first ripples of divine hope. Mary whispered a quiet prayer, one of gratitude, humility, and surrender. Thank you for trusting me with this miracle. May your will guide him and all who follow him. The birth of Jesus was not just a birth, it was the dawn of hope, the embodiment of faith, and the living proof that God's plan could unfold through the simplest, most humble hearts. Mary understood now more than ever, greatness is not in power or wealth, it is in obedience, in love, and in faith. And as the first light of dawn painted the sky, Mary held her child close, ready to face the journey ahead, guided by humility, courage, and a heart full of unwavering faith. What do you do when the whole world begins to talk about your child, but you know the cost of his destiny will pierce your very soul? For Mary, life after Jesus' birth was anything but ordinary. The stable in Bethlehem had been silent, sacred, filled with awe. But soon, news of the miracle began to spread. Shepherds told their stories, angels' songs echoed in whispers across the land, and strangers spoke of a star unlike any other. Mary listened, treasured every word in her heart, and yet, she also carried an unshakable sense of weight. The visits did not stop. Soon, wise men came from the east, guided by a star that had led them directly to the child. They entered humbly, laying gifts before him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Their eyes were wide with reverence, their voices hushed with awe. They saw in her son what the world had long waited for, a king. Mary held Jesus close, quietly observing. To others, he was a mystery, a prophecy fulfilled, a sign of hope. To her, he was still her child, small and fragile, dependent on her arms for warmth. She felt torn between the ordinary tenderness of a mother and the extraordinary truth that the son she held would someday hold the nations in his hands. But as the adoration grew, so did the shadows. Joseph had a dream, one that warned of danger. King Herod, threatened by whispers of a newborn king, sought to destroy the child. Fear wrapped itself around Mary's heart. Would her son's life already be in danger? Could she protect him? And so, once again, humility became her strength. Mary did not resist the unknown. She trusted. That very night, she and Joseph fled with the child into Egypt, the road long and uncertain. The journey was filled with hardships, dusty paths, sleepless nights, the gnawing fear of being pursued. Yet Mary's arms never wavered, her spirit never cracked. Each step was an act of faith, each prayer whispered into the night a shield stronger than iron. In Egypt, Mary lived quietly, far from the land she knew. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months. She kept her heart anchored in the promises of God, even when the future seemed clouded. She remembered the angel's words, the shepherd's joy, the wise men's reverence, and the star that had shone so bright. Those memories became her lantern in the dark. Through it all, Mary learned the silent strength of humility. She was not called to control the story, but to trust the author. She was not asked to understand every detail, but to remain faithful in every moment. And so, with each passing day, she embraced her role, not only the mother of a child, but the guardian of a promise. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that nothing was impossible with God. Have you ever watched a child grow, knowing deep down that their life was never truly yours to hold? For Mary, every day with Jesus was both a gift and a mystery. He was her son, running, laughing, learning, asking endless questions with a curious sparkle in his eyes. Yet at the same time, he was not just hers. Each moment reminded her of the angel's words, of the promises spoken that still hovered over his life like an unshakable destiny. Back in Nazareth, their days seemed simple. Joseph worked with wood and stone, and Mary filled the home with warmth. From the outside, it looked like any other family. But within their walls, the extraordinary quietly unfolded. Jesus' wisdom grew far beyond his years. His kindness touched neighbors, his compassion for others shone even in small gestures, helping the poor, comforting the lonely, listening with a depth of heart that no child his age should have. Mary watched, often in silence, treasuring these moments. She saw how he carried himself with humility, never seeking attention, always serving others. It reminded her of her own calling, to live with quiet surrender. Yet sometimes, her heart ached. She knew this humility would one day lead him to great sacrifice. Then came the day in Jerusalem. Jesus was just 12 when they traveled to the holy city for Passover. The streets were alive with pilgrims, the air heavy with incense and prayers. But when it was time to return home, Jesus was nowhere to be found. Panic gripped Mary's heart. She searched every street, every corner, her mind filled with fear. Had she failed to protect him? Was the promise slipping from her grasp? 3 days passed before they found him, in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening and asking questions. Everyone was astonished at his wisdom, his answers filled with depth far beyond his age. Mary's heart swelled with both relief and confusion. She cried out, "Son, why have you treated us this way? Your father and I have been searching anxiously for you." Jesus looked at her with calm eyes, his voice steady yet gentle. "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" The words pierced her heart. She didn't fully understand, but she kept them, treasured them deep inside. Once again, humility became her anchor. She realized her role was not to fully comprehend, but to trust. Her son's path was written by the hand of God, and she was chosen to walk beside him, even when the steps grew heavy. That night, Mary lay awake, staring at the stars. She thought of the boy asleep under her roof, the boy who was also the Savior of the world. She prayed softly, "Lord, give me strength to guide him in love, even when I cannot understand your plan." And as the years unfolded, she continued to walk in that quiet strength. The growing light within her son was undeniable, and though her heart trembled at the unknown, her faith never wavered. What if you knew from the very beginning that love would one day cost you everything? Mary carried that truth quietly in her heart. From the moment she said, "Let it be to me according to your word," she had surrendered to a life unlike any other, a life of joy, but also of piercing sorrow. It began when she and Joseph brought the infant Jesus to the temple, as the law required. The old man Simeon, righteous and devout, took the child into his arms and blessed God with trembling lips, "My eyes have seen your salvation, prepared in the sight of all nations." But then Simeon looked at Mary, his eyes soft yet grave. His voice dropped, filled with a weight she could not escape. "This child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." Mary froze. The joy of a mother collided with the chilling prophecy. She held her son tighter, as if her embrace could shield him from the destiny that awaited. A sword, piercing her soul. The words echoed in her mind for years to come, a reminder that love and pain often walk hand in hand. As Jesus grew, Mary witnessed his ministry unfold. Crowds gathered, lives changed, miracles whispered of heaven touching earth. She saw blind eyes open, broken hearts healed, storms silenced with a word. Each miracle filled her with awe, yet each step drew him closer to the destiny foretold. And through it all, Mary stood in humility. She did not seek the spotlight, did not demand recognition. She was there, quiet, steadfast, supportive. She was the first to believe, and she would be the last to leave. When the day of suffering finally came, when the cross stood against the sky, Mary was there too. Her heart shattered, yet she did not turn away. Simeon's prophecy was fulfilled, the sword pierced her soul. But even in her deepest grief, she did not curse God, did not doubt his plan. She stood in silence, the same silence of faith that had carried her from Nazareth to Bethlehem, from Egypt to Jerusalem, from joy to sorrow. Mary's story is not one of grandeur or power. It is a story of humility, of saying yes when the world would have said no, of trusting when everything seemed impossible, of loving when love meant heartbreak. Her answer to God's call was not simply words spoken once long ago, it was a lifetime of surrender, a daily yes, even when it hurt. And because of that yes, the world received hope, salvation, and a love that will never fade. So when we remember Mary, we don't just see the mother of Jesus, we see the quiet strength of humility, the courage of faith, and the enduring power of surrender. "I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me according to your word." Those words still echo today, calling us all to the same humility, the same courage, and the same faith that changed the world forever.